Let's go now to federal politics and the government's plan to send the latest asylum seekers who've arrived on Christmas Island to Malaysia. The government's also planning to film the transfer and post the video on YouTube as a deterrent. The Prime Minister says the plan aims to put a halt to the people smuggling business.
My understanding is that there are some children in the group. Obviously, officials will need to work through to ascertain who's who on the boat and also which are family groups and who is accompanied. Well, look, how individual people feel about any footage is a question for them, Tony, but my responsibility as Prime Minister is to do what I can to stop people smugglers preying on people, preying on their misery, taking their money and getting them to risk their lives at sea. What this is about is smashing the people smugglers' business model.
The Prime Minister on Lateline last night. For more, Andrew Green joins us now from Canberra. And Andrew, we're finally getting to the business end of this Australia-Malaysia swap deal.
That's right, Michael. The very first test for this Malaysian asylum seeker transfer agreement is now well underway. We see that the government is working to its timetable that it has specified of roughly 72 hours from the arrival of these asylum seekers on Christmas Island to finally getting them on some charter flights and sent to Malaysia. Well, some reports today suggest there are 2 planes ready to do that sometime before Tuesday. It could happen as early as Sunday. As we know, when these asylum seekers arrived on Christmas Island yesterday, they were taken to a briefing room where they were told their fate, that they would not be staying in Australia or on Australian territory, that they would in fact be taken to Malaysia. And there were a number of counsellors on hand, as we understand it, to help deliver that news. The government was bracing for perhaps some unrest when the asylum seekers learnt of their fate. But the big dilemma for the government is that roughly a third of those who arrived were unaccompanied minors or children. Some were accompanied, but a lot of these people arriving were of minor status. So the government does face some dilemmas here. The UNHCR, the High Commissioner for Refugees, is urging the government to tread very carefully with these unaccompanied minors and when they're sent overseas away from Australia. But in any case, there are also Malaysian observers who've arrived on Christmas Island late yesterday, a couple of Malaysian police, and they spoke too when they arrived on Christmas Island. Here's a bit of what they had to say.
I'm here to be given some briefings on the process of work and at the same time to be able to observe. This is a very good opportunity for us to see the good work that's been done.
That's one of the Malaysian officials there. And Andrew, the government's in a bit of a quandary here. We had the Immigration Minister, Chris Bowen, yesterday, again repeating the government's pledge there'll be no blanket exemption when it comes to kids. Now, if he were to offer some exemptions to some children on that boat, for argument's sake, the government would be accused of a massive policy backdown.
Absolutely, and there is the dilemma also that if there is exemptions granted on a case-by-case basis, that perhaps then that would give people smugglers operating in Indonesia and Malaysia and around the region a possible loophole that they could then potentially pitch to people wanting to make the journey here. So the government is very keen to stress to a domestic audience here in Australia and also to people smugglers overseas that there will be no exemptions and that putting unaccompanied minors on boats won't help the cause of anyone trying to come to Australia. But of course then that causes the dilemma of whether unaccompanied minors then, because of their vulnerable status, are then potentially harmed when they're sent overseas, or there is some kind of problem that occurs once they've left Australian control. So there is a real dilemma here, and this is something the opposition is particularly pointing out. It says that the government has created itself, as it puts it, a catch-22 situation, that by declaring no exemptions there is the potential for something to go wrong, but then if there are exemptions created down the track, then perhaps people smugglers have a potential loophole to sell to people wanting to come to Australia. It is a dilemma also from a political sense because Labor's left. There are very deep concerns within certain sections of the Federal Party about the treatment of children. So far there haven't been, since this deal deal was raised, any Labor backbenchers coming out to speak out against this deal, but the government will be nervous nonetheless that perhaps there is some unrest in sections of the backbench as well.
OK, Andrew Green and Canberra, we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.